whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind.
It was basically a cube with inside of a sphere where the points of the cube were touching outside of the sphere.
Roger. There's troubleshooting machines out here.
So this isn't anything that just is limited to the United States. It's a worldwide phenomenon.
That UFO podcast is powered by Zencastr. Zencastr is one of the world's leading platforms for recording and hosting podcasts. The open beta strives to put the power of studio-quality remote video production into the hands of anyone with a story to tell. Features include HD video recording, studio-quality sound, chat and footnotes. All running right from your browser so you can record from anywhere without ever installing anything. Check out the links in the show description to find out more. Hi everyone and welcome back to That UFO podcast. We've got another breakdown for you. This week, a few of you had reached out when you saw I had tweeted to say I was going to be going to see The Eternals, and I'm going to share my thoughts on that on this podcast with Dan, who is joining me now. Hi Dan.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going all right. I've got my thoughts on The Eternals, and it's not just we're turning into a movie review pod. However, I think there's some themes within this that are definitely worth talking about.
Sure.
I've not shared my thoughts with you yet about the film. You asked yesterday and I said I was going to wait until we'd done this today. It's got some interesting themes, but regarding it as a film, I'm not sure. But we'll come to that. I want to kick off though. Just before we kick off, I'm still setting up the show by talking about everything else first. We are going to talk about the Senate amendment as well, which is something, again, loads of you have reached out to us asking our thoughts on it. Are we going to talk about it? Yes, we are. Just gave it a couple of days to kind of let it breathe a little bit, but not too much more seems to have come out, so we'll talk about it today. But first, and probably the most important, Dan, for this time of year, we're going to talk a little bit about the raffle that you've put up online.
That's right. So when we recently went to London, I took with me a bunch of the Truth Lou Elizondo Obama-esque posters that I made, I guess, a few years back now. But I got Lou to sign one that we could use to fundraise some money for charity. And people can see the picture of the poster on the page. The charities we are supporting are both chosen by Lou. He told me to pick one of two suggestions and I couldn't choose. I think they were both equally important. So we'll be splitting all the proceeds 50-50 between these two charities. It's the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Their mission is to advance cures and to invest in prevention for pediatric catastrophic diseases. And basically no child is denied treatment based on race, religion, or the family's ability to pay. They do really, really beautiful work. They have quite a high profile, I think. I've heard of them through the years, helping a lot of people. So it's great to be able to support those. And then the other one was the Humane Society International. They work around the globe to promote human-animal bond rescue and protect dogs and cats, improve farm animal welfare, protect wildlife, protect or promote animal-free testing and research, and to respond to natural disasters and confront cruelty to animals the world over. So both are very important sides of the same coin, I think. So, like I say, we'll be splitting the proceeds 50-50 between them. Since launching less than 48 hours ago, we are sat very nicely on £710. So thank you to everyone who's donated so far. So that's
not far off $1,000 for anyone in the US.
That's right.
Big listenership. Yeah. So just about that.
So the way it works is, I don't know if people stateside know what a raffle is, but the idea is you buy a ticket. It's a numbered ticket. You can buy as many as you want. They all get entered into a prize pool. Someone randomly pulls a raffle ticket and that person wins. So you could buy a whole book of tickets and still lose. And
that's a great way to sell it, Dan. You could buy as many as you want and not win.
Or rather, I should say, you can buy one and still win the prize.
Yes, that's the way.
Yep. That way. But the prize, so it's a signed poster of the Truth art, signed by Lou Elizondo. I'm pairing that with one of the NFTs. It's kind of like an animated version of the same art. it's the same picture, but it glitches to the video of Lou on Fox saying that there's very compelling evidence that we may not be alone. So they match together. And probably by the time this goes out, I'll have updated the page. The person who donates the biggest amount will get a personal phone call from Lou Elizondo saying thank you for their donation, which I thought was fantastic. Lou's given a lot of his time to this.
Dan, let me clear that up as well, just so it's said by someone else, not just you. It doesn't mean if you win the raffle, you get the call from Lou. It's if you make the biggest single donation. So again, you could buy 99% of the tickets that would give you the biggest donation, but someone else could still win the raffle and get the poster. But that would mean you would get the call. So that's just making that clear.
That's
so
correct,
the call from Lou is just for the biggest donation. And again, at the end of the day, folks, the main thing is here, it's raising money for two charities, both very worthwhile. It means you get a chance to win a poster, but also for those who can spare a little bit more, and we get that's not everyone, you've got the opportunity separately to win a call from Lou or receive a call from Lou. You're not going to win. It's a thank you call for your pledge as well, which is something that money more or less cannot buy, or on this occasion it can actually buy. So unfortunately, but also listen, let me throw in as well, I never said to Dan, but if we will do another prize for the raffle as well, I'll give that UFO podcast hoodie and some stickers as well to someone. So we'll do another draw as part of it, Dan, so you can pull out another ticket that they can win another prize as well. So
nice,
you've got
awesome.
the chance
Thank
to
you,
win the poster that's signed from Lou, the phone call, and also we'll throw in for someone separately. So if you don't win the poster, you might win a hoodie and stickers bundle as well. And listen, we're happy to get you on one of the YouTube lives or something to say hello and thank you for making donations and stuff as well,
absolutely.
folks.
Absolutely. It's really cool to see the community do something positive. You know, a lot of people think of UFO Twitter as a place that some people go to bicker, and it's nice to use it for a positive thing.
There's been a lot of that recently, and I think that it was good timing. Dan had planned on doing this anyway, but like I say, it was a nice idea with the charities, and there's a lot of people arguing and moaning and calling each other out over stuff, and you'll probably notice we tend to stay out of most of it as much as we can online. But this is just a kind of nice thing to do at this time of year as well. So a few opportunities to win various prizes, but also give to some charities, which will be very well received and very well appreciated, I'm sure, as well. And look out for later on, should be this month, Dan, we'll hop on one of the YouTube lives. We've only done a couple of them. We'll make it a bit of a fun one as well. We'll try and get something good organised for it. It's not going to be a telethon, nothing like that, but we'll hop on for 45 minutes or an hour, and we'll answer some questions. But as part of that, we'll make sure you can potentially buy some raffle tickets and stuff as well. So make sure that's maybe the end of the month or early December.
Yeah,
sound good?
Sure. That'd be good. We'll have some mulled wine, get merry, and take some questions. I should probably share the link, right? It is, if you just type into your browser, go.rallyup, that's RALLYUP.com/truth. And that will take you straight to the page. Or have a look at my Twitter profile at The Signal, and it is pinned at the top there, so you can go straight there.
And if you're not on social media and you're listening or watching this, then the links will be in the description as well for that. We'll make a note, Dan, just to put those in definitely straight away after that as well. But listen, thank you very much. If you can and choose to donate to the raffle, let's move on to some UFO UAP news as well, because Dan, there has been a Senate amendment put forward, or a request for such. This is something people have looked at online, and it's pretty big news, and it's one that could fly under the radar. But again, it's one of those ones I look at it and go, am I completely sure what that means? And I tend to ask you, and we're at the point now we realise that a lot of other people are in the same kind of boat as well. So Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has submitted an important amendment for inclusion in the 2022 National Defence Authorisation Act, and essentially is a suggestion or a request that requires the government to strengthen its position on investigating UFOs. Now, tell us how this has come about, Dan.
Yeah, so this is the side of Ruben Gallagher. Sorry, did I say that right? Gallego? I might have messed that up. I apologize if I messed up the name, but
I think it's Gallego. Oh, I've done it as well. No, Gallego.
We've both done it. We'll
Ruben G.
Ruben, homeboy.
Yeah.
We'll go
The
with
R
that.
dog. Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, this is the National Defense Authorization Act. It was HR 4350. It is being voted on at the moment, but as these bills get voted on, people will propose better language. Things will have been missed, so they'll basically come in from the side and say, hey, you know what, I like what's there, but I would like to go further and specify a bunch more things to really shore up this effort. So what we're seeing is essentially that process start to happen. People start to, pull back and forth on the language. But in this case, it's a very positive development because the language is much more extensive and much more thorough than the previous efforts. So it goes into basically the biological effects and things like that. But the two main takeaways are that they want to set up the Anomaly Surveillance and Resolution Office. This is very similar to what Chris Mellon proposed on Joe Rogan a while back. That was the Office of Anomaly Resolution, I think it was. So this name kind of sounds like that language. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's maybe had a hand in briefing some people here.
And ASRO sounds good.
Yeah.
OSAP, ATIP, UAP Task Force, ASRO.
And then there's another thing as well that's basically set up, because that would be a government organization that would be funded for 4 years from 2022 to 2026, basically. But something that we always hear people say is, can people in this office be held to account? Is there a public relationship here? And a couple of things specified in this amendment was that each report would have an unclassified section. So similar to what we saw with the preliminary UAP report. But unfortunately, there's no specifics on what they need to include in that, which would be nice. But again, we're splitting hairs over a huge advancement from where we were a few years back. There is an advisory committee that is proposed here, which is very, very interesting. It's the Aerial and Transmedium Phenomena Advisory Committee. Places like the SCU, the Scientific Coalition. I forget the acronym. What's the word?
What, the SCU?
The SCU? Yeah. The Scientific Coalition.
Oh, you want to know what the U stands for?
Yeah. I imagine unidentified, right? Probably for the study of unidentified phenomena. But
yeah.
They're included. People from Galileo, Project Galileo are included. There's 25 members in all, and they actually specify in the bill what would qualify people for membership to this committee. And when you look through it, people that we're familiar with, like Chris Mellon, like Luis Elizondo, these people would absolutely be qualified to sit on this advisory committee. And this advisory committee includes, like I said, some public organizations. So what we're actually getting is, there are people suggested in here from the National Academy of Medicine, people from the Federal Aviation Administration, from NASA. So it's really a kind of bringing together of the best and the most informed of the informed so far to really try and crack this. There's even two people from the Optical Technology Center at Montana State University specified. And since we know that Project Galileo and the SCU are looking at this anyway, you've got to wonder if, the Optical Technology Center at Montana State University is already being utilized to look at, these things and study them. Like most bills that kind of come through, and most language, usually, and Tom Rogan pointed this out in an article as well, usually the things we see specified are very suggestive of what they know already, because they don't tend to ask for things that they, don't think exist, basically. Towards the end of the language, they actually specify what they mean by the term UAP, which I thought was great. It has to fit all of these points. So it has to be an airborne object that's not immediately identifiable. It has to be a transmedium object or devices. And it has to be C, submerged objects or devices that are not immediately identifiable and that display behavior or performance characteristics suggesting that they may be related to subjects described in subparagraph A. But basically that's going back towards transmedium. So there's a lot of really startling language here. They're clearly not talking about drones now,
However, let me be devil's advocate, because I have to do it here.
For sure.
They could still be looking at this, and I'm sure some of it is, as pretty advanced Russian or Chinese technology that, again, that is that unidentifiable, that, yeah, maybe they do have stuff that can go under the water and into the air.
And as I always say, it's not. I see people arguing about this drone stuff all the time. Like, is it or isn't it? And I don't think it's as black and white as that. The weird drone data is going to be in the data piles that our UAP data is in. It's anomalous readings, and if China are doing their job, if they're experiencing UAP too, they're going to be copying what they look like to present to the US as UAP, so they don't think it's China, right? But that wouldn't work unless UAP existed in the first place to copy. Plus, everything new that those guys are putting out, all the adversaries, will show up as an anomaly in the system until it's probably properly tagged. So we need to be going through this data, whether it's drones or UAP. You've got a horse in the race.
Absolutely. And Dan, let me just ask you as well, we've got the two bills already going through the Senate. As you've so eloquently put it, they are both trains on two separate tracks, but those tracks are heading towards the same station. And at some point, they're going to meet. And at that point, they will merge, become one train / one bill. They're not actually trains. And the language will be kind of ironed out. How does this amendment affect those?
So this amendment will be voted on in the coming weeks, I imagine sooner rather than later. If it's adopted, this language replaces the language in the NDAA and becomes the language that there are so many acronyms. The Intelligence Authorization Act is on the other train track, so it will compete against that. And when I say compete, I mean that loosely, because this is very clearly a bipartisan issue. No one's really argued about it so far, so I think it's going to be fairly smooth. And the IAA, which was kind of when we had one bill going through last year, that was this. Those guys were kind of ahead of the pack anyway. So I think maybe they were kind of being a little bit timid in what they were asking for. And when those two trains come to meet, they're going to be amazed at the other train and go, cool, your train's better. Let's go with this one,
One gentleman who has been in the headlines recently with his press conference was Robert Salas, and he wasn't happy with the language, Dan, was he, that was used within the bill?
No, he wasn't. Mostly because when you read through what he's written, he argues that it's not specific enough to hold people to account for what's gone on over the last, 60, 70 years, what him and his service, or him and his colleagues and the other service members went through when they reported these happenings. So I can understand that he wants a bit more recompense there. His main worry seems to be about no hearings being included, but it was pointed out that those hearings can still be requested even though they're not specified in the language. So I don't think we should be worried about that. They can still come.
Dan, for you, and we might have touched on this in the past, but what exactly do hearings accomplish here? Like, for what we all want, ultimately we want to know what's happening, what's going on, where these things might be from, why they're here, how, as a civilization, we could learn from them, move on, all those kind of incredible, amazing questions. What do hearings accomplish at this stage with so many people clambering for them? Is it a little bit of looking for their pound of flesh along with everything else that could come?
Yeah, I think so. Hearings have, at least in my experience, they seem to be suggested as a way of sifting through the historical baggage of this subject. We might see hearings off the bat of the IG investigation, the Inspector General investigating the DoD's handling of the UAP issue. But what Robert Salas is speaking about is definitely this historic kind of cover-up and what they put service members through, making them leave early, making them look crazy, their lives were turned upside down. This is all real, and the Air Force sure are very, very quiet on it. That's something that was specified in this bill. Actually, they talk about holding departments that are stonewalling research and to get to that data that they need, holding those departments accountable. So organizations like the Air Force will absolutely be accountable, and their silence so far, it's a deafening silence. Everybody's noticed it. Something else mentioned was coordination with allies, which excites me, as a UK dweller. Boris Johnson's been asleep at the wheel here. He might not be the guy. I imagine, there's Baroness Goldie and other people that kind of look after these areas in the UK. It's a little different to how it works in America. But I'm hoping, because that's in there, this coordination is actually going on behind the scenes between certain people. And hopefully in the next few months, we'll see that conversation open up.
I still think that conversation, and this isn't from a place of knowledge, just opinion, from a UK point of view, when it happens, is the UK just assuming this is just US, Russia, China, playing their games with each other, trying out secret technologies, and we have no interest in it whatsoever. I still don't think the UK wants to entertain, at the right level, because I'm sure there is interest, entertain the conversation around UFOs.
I mean, it's quite possible. But something I learned the other day that I didn't know is that the US pretty much learned their spycraft from us. So, thinking back historically on this issue, before kind of computers came about, the UK would have been incredible at keeping this secret. And I can't imagine that their spread over the globe at one point didn't make them privy to a few experiences or stories or, data that suggest these things are real.
Absolutely. Dan, just before we move on to the Eternals talk, where we're going to have a little look at some of the themes that are very interesting, especially if you've got an interest in this subject. This week coming up, we've got Listener Call-In, part 1 and 2. That'll be out. And we will also have a show next week on KGRA, digital broadcasting, which comes out a few weeks later on the main platform as well. And we're going to be talking through some of your suggestions from the Reddit post I made, but also some of you've got in touch on Twitter with it as well. And it's your opinion on some of the lesser understood aspects of this phenomenon, with some really good posts on there. So look forward to those. And just one more request from myself, and this is obviously from Dan as well. Firstly, thank you to everyone who has gone on and left a review, because we got a whole raft of them through on Apple. And some really nice comments as well. So thank you very much for that. The comments are always appreciated. But if you're listening to this and you want to support the show because you like what we do, then go on and just leave us a 5-star review, because it makes a big difference on any platform you're on, for visibility, for credibility, for getting the word out there. On Apple, it makes a big difference to the charts and everything as well. And make sure if you're on something like Spotify, which Spotify has just overtaken Apple as the world's biggest platform for podcast listening as well.
That's pretty cool. It started kind of more with Spotify, right? I think. I might be wrong there, but yeah.
What,
cool.
Podcasting?
I'm talking out my bum.
Yeah, you are, because podcasts were an Apple thing, weren't they?
Yeah.
But Spotify have managed to take over. But again, if you're on Spotify, you can't leave a review, but make sure you do follow, and you've got the auto download stuff hit, so you've got the stuff straight in your folder to listen to as it's released as well. But yeah, any of those reviews are greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Dan, so I know you went to see the Eternals. You tweeted the picture to me. We don't tweet each other. You sent me the picture. You sent me the picture to show me you were in the theatre to watch it, and I was like, I'm going to go see it soon. So I took my little boy Charlie yesterday, who's a massive fan of the Marvel movies, a huge Spider-Man fan, and
I imagine he had a hard time sitting still.
He sat through this whole thing really impressive. Yeah, really impressively. He said he really enjoyed it. Now, let me just very quickly, I think some people want to hear us talk about the movie a little bit as a movie, which we don't normally do, but we're movie fans, both of us. And then we'll talk about some of the themes within it, which I think might have more interest to those who are purely here for the UFO and UAP chat, because there's some very interesting ideas. Dan, and to any listeners who asked me, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's the poorest or worst of the Marvel movies, if you don't count the first Hulk movie, which doesn't count and shouldn't count, that was made before Iron Man. It reminds me of, do you know what? I think it's worse than the Sony attempts at Marvel movies. I think it's style over substance. It looks really nice, but it's a little bit like Jeremy Corbell made a Marvel movie, in the sense there's a lot of exposition shots, and there is a lot of sprawling shots of the desert or backgrounds or landscapes that look really pretty, but that's not what you're there to watch in a Marvel film. So I think it was a swing and a miss as hiring directors go. I think the casting was pretty mixed. Angelina Jolie wasn't great. she could have been taken out of that, and they could have gave that to an unknown. I thought the girl who played Cersei's, is that right? Yeah,
Cersei.
yeah, Cersei.
Much to the confusion of many people that watch Game of Thrones, because
yes, that's why I was thinking that doesn't sound right. I thought Cersei was excellent. I liked her. I'm going to be really hypocritical here and say listening to the Scottish guy takes me right out of a movie, especially when he's surrounded by Americans in a film. That accent just took me right out of it. And I thought Kingo was really well cast, good character. I just thought there was far too much going on. It was a little bit like they wanted to make an Avengers movie before they had done any of the groundwork beforehand. And it showed because the director really struggled, more so than the first Justice League movie, which crammed a lot in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I just don't think it's as damning as you think.
I knew you'd be more positive. I knew you'd be more positive about it.
It was very jumbled. It was very wordy. You know, it was long. There was a lot of stuff that I loved in it. It felt like the start of a new chapter to me in the Marvel Universe. It felt like, okay, this is kind of a new story. It felt familiar in some ways, but like you say, there was kind of some different things going on that you don't really expect when you go to see a Marvel movie, you know?
But I don't want to spoil it. Yeah, this is non-spoiler for people as well. We'll make that note. We won't spoil stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. But for me, I thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, going forward, I'm excited to see what they do. I have my fan theories. I know you haven't seen Shang-Chi yet, but you know there might be something there.
I went to the cinema. I went to the cinema to see it, and my little boy was obsessed with it. So he keeps asking me to. Yeah, you know the thing. Why you've mentioned that, Dan, and we won't mention on here is because I've asked you to get a copy of it for me. Cough, cough, and because my little boy wants to see that. So, yeah, Mm-hmm. So as a movie, I would encourage people, if you are a Marvel fan, go and see it. If you don't want to go and see it, absolutely wait for it to come out or watch it at home. But go with low expectations and you'll probably come out of it much happier.
Yeah, I mean, I went to see it after it had been bombed by critics on, you know, Rotten Tomatoes. So my expectations were very like, you know, whatever. And I went in and just found a lot more to like than the critics did, evidently.
However, one more thing on the film itself. Of those two end credit scenes, Dan, devastated with the casting of the person who appears in the first end credit scene.
Oh, okay.
Awful, awful, awful choice to include that person in any type of movie.
I get what you mean with the person, but he fits that character perfectly. For a very particular reason, but I'll have to tell you off podcast, otherwise it'll spoil it.
I'm not happy with the one direction they've chosen to go in with that one. So, but yeah, listen, on some of the themes that were discussed, we're here to discuss as part of it. It was really interesting because there's so much that we have talked about, not just over the decades in ufology or when it comes to UFOs or aliens, but just in the last couple of weeks and months. The themes running throughout it, you know, there are different forces. You've got celestial beings bringing light and balance to like a universe. There are darker forces at play as well, known as deviants within the film, who are kind of like the bad guys. And then there are another group who seem to be somewhat in the middle, who are there to fight them and do someone else's bidding. And that's something we've heard talked about by many people, and it's not a new idea by any means, but the idea that the universe has been created and there are people or beings or entities who are in charge of the universe in various ways. Some of them good, some of them not so good, some of them look out for us and some of them don't. And that's quite a recent theme that's been brought up in ufology, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we say recent, the work of Jack Kirby, the guy who made these comics, and they were very much made in response to the Justice League. He based his work on the work of Eric von Daniken, who, if you look into him, he's all ancient aliens, and you know our DNA was tampered with, kind of similar to Zachariah Sitchin's stuff. I think that's right. He did the Ninth Planet stuff. Where the idea was that a race called the Anunnaki came to Earth, uses slaves to kind of mine minerals out of the planet. I think it was monatomic gold. It's been a while since I read that one. But supposedly some of the Anunnaki decided that they didn't want to subjugate us anymore and thought we could be more, and so stepped in between and caused this big war, and the planet was reset, and then we kind of developed from what was left over.
So that's what I was going to ask you next. Is again, you're a comic geek. I've listened to your previous podcast that you had with Mike or have with Mike, and I like some of the background and that sort of stuff, and that's interesting to know. There are a few other things for me that stood out. Now, you see at one point there's a craft which is buried in Iraq, and we hear about archaeological finds and what may or may not be hiding under the ice, under the deserts, under the ground and mountains. So that was a really interesting idea. The big triangle, Dan, it had windows.
It did, but only from inside, right?
Yes. Now, I was going to make this. That's what I was going to say. Is from the outside, I couldn't immediately see any windows. There's lots of inscription and writing, but they were inside looking out, and it very much seemed to be like for an aesthetic thing for them, that they just wanted to have a little look at the universe as they flew along. And do you think that's a fair point? Because we had a few people come back at us on this on YouTube in a very healthy, debatable way, who were questioning, well, why would they need windows? Of course, it's ridiculous. Any interstellar craft or alien craft would have a need for windows, but then why not?
They're Mac OS users, right? Yeah.
Lol. But yeah, why wouldn't another species or beings or entities who can travel in the vastness of space not want to kind of look about what's around? Would that not interest them? Or I don't know. I don't see why not.
The windows, the way we think of windows is just kind of a weak point in a structure with glass, right? If a house is hit by a tornado, the windows are going to blow out first and then the bricks go afterwards, right? But if we had sufficiently advanced technology to just make, if we could, what's a good example? So this is a strange example maybe, but when I visited Amsterdam, there was a toilet outside a museum that was completely clear. You could see straight through it. But when people went in and they locked the door, as soon as current ran through the glass, it changed to like a frosty white and you couldn't see through it anymore. It's scary, right? On the off chance it goes wrong.
That. Yeah, that's a certain kind of person that still chances that.
Yeah. And it could just be something like that. The very structure of the craft, you apply a current to it and voila, you can see out. We don't need to think of them as windows in a kind of anthropomorphic way. An octopus probably thinks of its kind of hole in its burrow as a window, but it's a hole to us. It's a tricky thing with language.
Now, there was a story that ran through, and I suppose it was for a Marvel fan. People wanted to know, well, these all-powerful beings, why didn't they interfere during the snap? And that's explained quite quickly, and I think it's explained within the trailer as well, so it's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
That they were told and instructed to not interfere with anything to do with human history. And throughout the film, you see various times in our human history where there have been wars or technological advances made, and the Eternals, the group, are there for those. And you kind of hear in the background that there's one of them, is it Fastos, who has the idea to give us steam
Steam engine, right.
Steam engine long before we're ready for it. And they make the argument, and I thought that was really fascinating, given what we talk about, that let's give them this, it's really going to help them. And they all say no, it's too early. But it's going to let them do this and this, and it's where they've only had the wheel a couple of 100 years. And it's like, again, at what point is a civilization ready to move on technologically? And it's those breaking points of, is it the end of a civilization, or do they kick on from that point? The last big one we've had was probably that atomic nuclear energy age, that I suppose you could argue, have we moved on fully from it, or are we still at that breaking point that it could go either way? And I thought that was a really interesting aspect to it, that there are entities who want to help and assist humanity, but for whatever reason, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. And that's something that you hear about as well throughout the decades in ufology and research and stories as well.
Yeah, a friend of mine, when I got out, he said, don't tell me anything about it, but the one thing I want to know is, do they mention why they didn't interfere? And it was nice to be able to say to him, it's kind of the whole point of the film, actually. That they argue over whether they should or shouldn't, and certain characters are a bit more willing to, because they can see where they can help, perhaps where the other ones couldn't. But that steam engine bit was great, and it does later extend in the film to something that you just mentioned, and I won't spoil the scene because it was one of my favorite scenes in the whole film. And there's a lot of people in our community who will see that and kind of go, yeah, okay, I get it.
I thought there was a nice nod as well to, and I might just be reaching here given the interest I have in UFOs, but to crop circle patterns, that when they're having those transmissions between the Celestials and them and their minds, that as they fade between going from the Earth to space, you see like crop circle patterns appearing and flashing on the screen as the space kind of melts away as well, which I thought was a nice nod to that sort of stuff that we'll be talking about recently.
Absolutely. And kind of piggybacking off of that, it's interesting to think of crop circles as marks of a natural process as opposed to a picture drawn, right?
And I suppose that's something I've thought about in the past, and you wonder why would one of these craft leaving, I could get why it would leave one shape of a burn within the ground or a field, but why one of these big elaborate patterns? But then why not? Again, it's putting that human stamp on things, isn't it? That, it would do this, so it would leave that pattern. Well,
it makes
why
me think
wouldn't
of
it?
cymatics, where they put the starch onto a plastic sheet over a speaker and they play different frequencies and it makes different shapes. You can do it with sand as well on a speaker. And they all make very similar patterns to what we see in crop circles. These fractals and patterns appear in nature. We just get to see them produced at a macro scale.
Yes. Well, listen, any final thoughts on the movie, Dan, before we wrap this one up?
Don't listen to Andy. Go see it. It's great. There's a lot in it for people in the community, and especially for us Celts, I would say.
2 hours and 40 minutes if you want to stay and watch both end credit scenes as well. It's not as bad as Titanic at that sort of runtime, but it's certainly no end game. I will give you that much.
I was in my teenage years when Titanic came out, and I saw it 7 times in the cinema.
That 7. I think I would have rather been on the boat itself. So listen, folks, that's all we've got time for this one. We are going to carry on with recording our listener call-in show. Thank you for listening to this breakdown. Lots coming up this month. Get your questions over for John Ramirez, which will be a very interesting interview. I promise you that much. You can email those to ufouapam@gmail.com, or if you're on the Patreon or Apple Premium, jump onto the Discord server, which you can get in touch and get the link for, and you can leave those in the listener questions section as well. Or on Patreon, you can post those within the John Ramirez questions section. There'll be a few more interviews I will announce soon for the month, as well as listener call-in and a few more breakdowns. Make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, which, like I said, is Dan's baby. He is putting stuff up there more and more, so pretty much any mistakes that happen, it's Dan's fault. Fair enough, Dan?
Yeah, entirely my fault. go.rallyup.com/truth. Tell your friends.
Yes, and make sure you click the link in the description to get involved with the raffle as well, folks. Once again, thank you for supporting. Thank you for listening. Thank you for getting in touch. It is amazing when you do. Send over some emails, send over some DMs to myself and or Dan. It's always appreciated, and we'll speak to you soon. That is all for this week's show. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember to leave the podcast a review on your chosen platform. You can like, retweet and subscribe. That would all be very much appreciated. The shows are being uploaded onto YouTube as we speak more and more. You can sign up at patreon.com/thatUFO podcast to access the shows ad-free as well. Please get in touch on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, That UFO Podcast. Of course, on Twitter, it's at UFO UAPAM. And again, folks, as always, keep looking up. You never know what you might see.
It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer, more like a hubcap designed by Chaucer, a little baroque and quite steampunk, like Alice was playing bass for the Parliament of Folk. The little fucker hovered right outside of my window, and when I shoved out the screen, he made it an issue. I don't think he expected me to see his ass, but I'd had some champagne and smoked a little around. Meditative gamma state full on meta. You can't imagine how it could have been any better. I got to the top of the stairs and there he was. Like, you awake? I was about to abduct you, cuz. I jumped back fucking nearly kissed myself, and I climbed out the window after the elf, and I woke up in my bed, and there was something on my head, and everything was weird, and everything was red. And I called out to my boys. They thought this was noise. They thought it was a dream. They thought it was my toys. They thought it was my problems, and they think I should seek therapy, and I don't know what it is, because it doesn't really scare me. If you really want to know who I think I beat, I think it's you and me and us and we and him and her and that and she and that thing over there and what's that, Jake? But for being serious, open your mind, consider your heart, consider time, consider your space, consider your lies, consider your life,